Well, hello everybody. Thank you for coming to my channel and checking out my video. If you have been here before, welcome back. If it's your first time visiting, I'm glad you stopped by. So I'm Megan, the faithful fibromyalgia warrior, and I'm really glad you guys decided to check out my videos because there are so many out there um, by so many great people. It means a lot that you wanted to look at mine. So I hope it's encouraging. I hope it is helpful always. And I hope that maybe if you're struggling with some of the things that I do, maybe some of the things I've done might help you as well. So those of you who may not know, or maybe didn't quite get what I was talking about from my title, God's plan: eat the meat, skip the veg, and even the fruit. Now, yes, all of these things are provided by God. Okay? I absolutely believe that. And if you live in a climate where you can enjoy fruit a few weeks of the year and you want to eat some, I mean, obviously I am not the food police. I am not here to tell you what you can or cannot eat, what you should or shouldn't eat necessarily. But I will say I have had to learn the things that I don't handle very well. So, for example, it is now September in England, okay? And bananas are not local and they are not in season, and yet they show up at our grocery store because they are shipped here from faraway places. Does that mean I should be eating them? Probably not, because they have fructose in them, which will affect your triglyceride levels, which if they get too high, can force your liver to develop non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and that is a very bad thing. Okay, and that is a big role that fructose will play. It is not the fructose that you worry about, let's say, as far as your blood, your insulin levels and your blood glucose levels. What is concerning from the point of fructose is your triglycerides. And if you develop fatty liver disease, whether it's from alcohol or other things, the less your liver functions well, the worse off you'll be. Okay? So if it was June and strawberries, local strawberries were available, and if I was able to digest them, which I cannot, I have irritable bowel, and fruits with seeds, well, fruits in general, I cannot process. They simply go right through me, and they wreak a lot of havoc along the way. But if you're somebody who seems to be able to tolerate a handful of berries every now and then, and you want to do so, and they're in season, therefore meaning they're local, and so you're used to seeing them, and therefore you can eat them, and you're probably acclimated to them, obviously go ahead. I don't at all recommend any sort of vegetables for myself. I cannot digest plants. In fact, most of us can't. Not really. If we consume a lot of plants, often what we will find is that at some point, whether it's immediately, like in my case, or within maybe a few weeks, that our bowel movements, our gut health are affected because we're not really designed to absorb anything from plants. So even those of us who maybe eat salads, even if we eat them with, say, iceberg lettuce, which is low in oxalates, versus dark leafy greens, things like kale and spinach and all that horrible, icky stuff. Even if what we eat is fairly low in anti-nutrients and phytates and all that other bad stuff, doesn't mean we're actually designed to eat it. Just because it's there doesn't mean we're supposed to eat it. You know, some of our ancestors in some of the more southern climates, like in the Central and South America, had to learn how to eat these things to avoid starvation when they were the first of our ancestors to hunt big animals and game into extinction, right? Those that were adapted to cold moved further north, but eventually all of the big animals were gone. So why am I making this long introduction? Well, partly because this is unscripted and that's just what happens when I make a video sometimes. But the other part is that God's plan was always for us to eat a meat-based diet. Always. I've said this before in other videos, but I will say it again because I think it's worth mentioning that God's plan has always been that we get the majority of our nutrients from animals, if not all of our nutrients, from animals and or animal products. I'm talking like their, eggs, if they lay eggs, milk sometimes in the case of, cows. Some people would drink goat's milk or turn it into cheese and consume that. Lamb, I don't know if you would you wouldn't necessarily drink sheep's milk, but you would perhaps make it into there was this horrible smelling cheese that my grandfather used to love eating, my dad's dad, and it was, I think it was made out of sheep's milk, and he loved it. It was like this, almost like liquidy. So it was almost like what is it? A camembert? I'm not sure which of the two is softer, but it was really, really, really soft cheese. It smelled awful, but he loved it. Okay. And that was I believe that was from sheep. Maybe it could have been goats. I'm not sure. Anyways, I didn't eat it because it smelled really bad. But those who can tolerate dairy. Okay. But God always planned for us to eat the animals. The thing is, what do you feed the animals? Well, that's where the plants came in. The plants came in as a source of food to other animals that we would then be able to eat. And if you look back through the book of Genesis, chapter 1, through Moses, God explains he laid out a very specific order of creation. First was the earth, right? Earth came first, including the soil and the oceans and the lakes and rivers. And, day and night and the heavens above and all the planets and our galaxies, etc. Second came the plants. The plants came next. Then the animals, and then he created humans. So from a Christian perspective, a spiritual perspective, even looking back, even if you aren't a Christian or maybe not a believer in God, but something else, even if you look back and your spiritual beliefs are rooted in archaeological, anthropological, and historical facts and research, it has been shown, it has been proven that there was earth, then the plants all came, then the animals on the earth. Okay? So however you believe the animals arrived, they came after the plant life. That is indisputable. In order. Why? So that the plants would grow and evolve and the sturdiest ones would be left. The animals came after that. Why? Because that's what they would eat to fatten them up so that the smaller animals could then be eaten by the bigger ones and the even bigger ones. And eventually those animals were for us to eat. Those were given to us to eat. And if you read in Genesis chapter 9, where Noah's being addressed, it's brought up again. And it's pointed out that yes, there are all of those fruits, seed-bearing fruits, because he lived in an area that at the time was extremely warm, and where the ark stopped was on a mountaintop, and eventually when they left the ark, there was lush nature around them, right? So they lived in a place where naturally fruit would grow for however long that season was. And yes, they could eat it, but God also made a point of saying that there would be grasses, there would be wild animals, and the domesticated animals for them to eat. Whatever they could hunt and or whatever they decided to raise was for them to eat as food. And why is that so important? Because I know there are so many people who would say, no, actually the biblical way of eating is we can only eat plants. And in fact, that's not true. It's never been true. Okay? From the very beginning, God gave us animals as food. Plants would be there if there was a stretch of time where we were in between being able to eat meat because, we were in between kills from hunting parties. So in order to avoid starvation, there were fruits, which would help put on a bit of a body fat for, if that length of time stretched out. And some plants were found to be easier to eat after much preparation, after soaking things like wheat and barley and other grains for days, if not weeks, before, almost fermenting everything before eating it. So it would be somewhat digestible. And, I know there are some people who would say, yes, but, how can we say that? I mean, manna came from heaven. Yes, when the Jewish people left Egypt and fled and made their way to Israel, there was manna that came down from heaven. But it's not like God said, don't ever eat meat. It's just they needed something during their time of exodus and escape. They had to eat something to avoid starvation, right? And therefore, manna was there in the morning. But it's not as though the command ever came down to say, that's it, we're done. We're only eating plants. That was never, ever something that was said. It never was, right? And the other thing that I find interesting, I've just watched this amazing video on YouTube between Joey Schwartz. He's known as on YouTube as Carnivore Conversations, and Dr. Alan Davies. He was vegan for 25 years, part of the Seventh-day Adventist movement for 25 years before going carnivore. And what he has to say is absolutely mind-blowing. But think about through the text, right? Jewish people in particular would always sacrifice lamb and have it at Passover. And there would, of course, be other animal sacrifices given at the time of Pentecost, over the time of history. They would have, to celebrate, they would have sacrificed a calf or a prize bull and had that to eat. So they were eating meat. And even if you fast forward to the times of Jesus, well, Jesus ate meat. He would have eaten lamb at Passover. He provided fish along with loaves of bread, yes, to the people that had gathered when he was with his apostles. So if he was promoting a plant-only life, he would not have provided fish. He knew that, the bread would have filled them up and helped put a bit of fat on their bodies, but it was the nutrition from the fish that would have been cut. In fact, Jewish people, think about it. Peter and his brothers were fishermen. So people ate fish. They would have eaten some sort of poultry, In fact, doves were offered as a sacrifice when your firstborn child was a son. That if you were poor. So doves or even pigeons. So it's not as though the birds were never eaten. They would have been. Maybe only at weddings or special occasions, but there was meat involved. there was meat involved. And even through the book of Acts later on, when the new converts were wondering, well, or people were wondering, okay, well, we've got these new converts who now happen to be Gentiles, and they would have eaten lots of meat. At times, it was, sacrificed to idols, or it was strangled to kill it. It wasn't killed in what we would consider now a kosher manner. Really the only thing they were told that was required food-wise was to make sure the animals were clean and they were not eating the meat sacrificed to idols or that had been strangled. That was it. And that was open to everything. Now, by clean, what they were inferring was ruminant animals. Why is that? Why are they considered clean? Well, ruminant animals, because they have multiple stomachs, whatever they ate, whether it was slop, rubbish, grasses, whatever they could get into their mouths and chew on, it would go through a 4-part or 3-part digestive process. So what it meant was stuff that would be we would be unable to eat or digest as humans. By the time it ended up as delicious skeletal meat on these animals and we ate it, it was now clean. It's like taking sewage water, putting it through a processing plant, and then you put it through like a Brita filter again, and you get all of the bad crap out. Now you've got purified water that didn't start out that way, but now it's drinkable, right? And so all the cellulose, all the grasses, any, plants or vegetation that say cows and sheep, goats, in some parts of the world, zebras, whatever ruminants ate that were then eaten later, well, they were clean. They were all considered clean. And the main reason I think why perhaps pork was not considered a clean meat was because it only has one stomach. And the same with poultry. And so even then perhaps, now this is just a thought, I don't know for sure, but at the time, people maybe realized that whatever the pigs ate, whatever the chickens were eating, well, perhaps the chickens were safer because they were eating seeds and corn. But whatever the pigs would eat, and pigs will eat almost anything, it wasn't getting cleaned as thoroughly as a ruminant animal can clean because it only has a single stomach. And that's why perhaps even today, people who try to eat pork, if they have a reaction, it's not necessarily the pork that is the issue. It's whatever the pig was fed that people react to. So if pigs are heavily fed corn and soybean and other grains and seeds, which are not things that humans are really able to absorb and process effectively, if at all, well, that's why we can have issues with pork. For whatever reason, bacon doesn't seem to be an issue necessarily, but that's why pork chops or pork loin or even pulled pork, depending on what that pig was fed before it was slaughtered, can end up in the meat and it can affect us as people. But the reality is, whether or not we are eating, whether we choose to try to eat pigs or beef or lamb or zebra or giraffe or polar bear or walrus or seal, whatever we decide to eat that is meat is there for us to eat. And some of us have different tolerances as to what we can actually digest, and that actually doesn't seem to affect us. Like for me, other than bacon, I stay away from pork. I don't do well with it. And I feel the same way about most poultry. I can eat egg yolks, but not chicken. It just, It seems to have a strange reaction. And again, I think it's because they both have a single stomach. Therefore, whatever they eat is going to end up in them, right? It's not going to be super clean. It's not like I'm eating that feed directly, but it still ends up in their tissue. And that may be why I don't do well with fish. Doesn't matter what fish it is. For me, at least, I'm hypersensitive, and it always gives me a bit of a reaction. But beef and lamb, no problem. Any day, any amount, all the time, super happy. Why do I share all that? Well, because I just want to show that it really is God's plan for us to eat meat. And you know what? As the scriptures say, all things are permissible. Not all things are beneficial. And that's not just in regards to, say, having too much alcohol or, smoking or illegal substances. It's also about every single thing we put in our bodies. And again, I am not the food police. If you want to go out and eat burgers with buns, that's your call. But based on what's helped me with, not just with losing weight, but with what was my constant chronic pain and inflammation, what has helped me the most is to get rid of all carb and all starch. Whether that is fruit, whether that is vegetables, whether that is anything processed, all gone. I keep it simple. Ground beef that's at least 20% fat, salt to taste, egg yolks, and usually a few pieces of bacon crumbled on top. And I have never, ever felt better in my whole life. And the good thing is that, wow, it's so simple. It's so simple. If you are struggling with anxiety or depression, leaky gut, irritable bowel syndrome, or other gut disturbances and issues, if you have been trying and trying to maybe lose that last 10 pounds and nothing's happening and it won't shift and you can't figure out why, if you've suddenly been told, as I was, surprisingly, 3 years ago, that all of a sudden your cholesterol's gone up, but you haven't really changed anything, but you tend to eat a lot of fruit, or perhaps you like to eat like whole wheat toast, things like peanut butter and bananas, that is probably the issue. So as much as, obviously, I'm not the food police, and you can eat whatever you want, as much as you want. But as somebody wise has once said, why have a long life if you don't have good health? And that's all part of it. So I don't know if this has been helpful or not, but I hope it is. Something to think about. And you should probably, definitely check out this video from Joey Schwartz. Carnivore Conversations is his handle. And he interviews, like I said, Dr. Alan Davies. It's an amazing video. It is absolutely worth watching. And I hope that you find help, and I hope that you find some relief from your problems. This worked for me, okay? When I went to strictly carnivore and I cut out all the carbs, all the carbs. I only drink, now if I drink coffee, it's black only. I only drink, and I usually try to keep it to 2 cups a day. Other than that, I'm drinking strictly decaf, black. Now, some people who are carnivore would say, you know what? That's not maybe traditionally considered carnivore because obviously coffee comes from a bean. And they're right. But that's what I'm doing. So I'm carnivore. I'm strict other than coffee. And I keep it black. I don't do dairy, or I try not to do dairy. Every now and again, I'll have a couple of pieces of like an Edam cheese, or a little bit of red Leicester, and I mean a little, like one a slice, maybe two. But every time I find that, you know what, it just makes me want to eat more carbs. So I would say I'm 95% carnivore. I try to keep that 95% carnivore to 98% of the time. So in other words, mostly I eat just meat and egg yolks, and that's it. But anything that once swam, crawled, walked, or flew is meat. And so whatever works for you, whatever you enjoy and that you can afford, eat that. And you will feel so much better. I promise you will. Okay? You may not need to lose any weight, and I hope that's the case, but in my experience, most of us have come to this space because we were overweight or obese and we needed to lose weight, but we also had underlying medical issues. So like I said, not just mental issues, but physical in my case, chronic pain, chronic inflammation, fibromyalgia, irritable bowel syndrome, other gut issues as well, and yeah, all of it together. Raynaud's, underactive thyroid, high triglycerides, the onset of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, amongst other things. Oh, and recovery. I was trying to recover from bulimia after being a part of that for over 30 years. So, does this mean it magically fixed the minute I ate meat? Did it fix everything instantly? No, it did not. Not at all. And anybody who promises you that, don't believe them. Okay? I started to feel better within about 5 days. My brain fog started to lift. Honestly. Within 2 weeks, I think I was down 5 or 6 pounds, maybe 10. I'm not quite sure. Okay? But I just kept going. I kept feeling better and better. Right now, as the weather's getting cooler out, I notice it. I notice a bit of stiffness in my joints, but nowhere near what it used to be. My depression is now just every now and then I feel kind of blech, melancholy. And that's typically around when my cycle is about to happen. But then, also starting on the road to menopause. So that's just, for me, that's just my hormones going through like some kind of like last ditch hurrah before they change forever as I go to the next stage of life. And that's just part of life. But eating the way I do gives me energy and has me more level and level-headed than I ever felt with being high on plants and all those carbs. So for no other reason, that might be it. That might be a good reason for you to try this. There are some people out there who can only eat ruminants, like not even bacon. That means they can only eat, say, beef or lamb or one of the 200 different species of ruminant animals that exist on this planet. God created them for a purpose, and their purpose is to feed us. Plants, and I'm going to say more so fruit. Fruit was only meant to be there if it existed where you happen to live. If it was in season for a few weeks, fine, eat it and fatten up a little before the winter season, rolled in and meat would be more scarce. Good idea. So your body could, get its energy from the stored body fat. That's what it does. But in places where they've never had any plants, they're thriving. I can't think of anybody, say, who's Inuit in North Alaska, living above in Greenland, northern Canada. If they're following a traditional diet, they have virtually no health issues whatsoever. And people tend to live an extremely long life eating that way. And they've never had plants. So we don't need plants. We've been told we need them, but that's a whole other conversation. It's a whole other big pharma conspiracy theory going on. because we do not need vegetables. We might be okay if we choose to eat a little bit of fruit here and there. You know, some berries perhaps. Locally grown, not overly modified so they're super sweet. That's never how they were when our ancestors ate them. And they weren't available 12 months of the year either. The other thing is we don't need plants. Plants exist. Grasses, grains, cereals, even some vegetables. They exist purely, or should exist purely, to feed the animals, which we can then eat and get nutrition from. That's it. But of course, somewhere along the line, we humans decided, we know better. We know better than God. So we got this. Yeah, no. God is a loving God. He is patient. He is waiting for us to all wise up and figure this out ourselves. And luckily, more of us are. But unfortunately, a lot of us are not. So that's where we're at. And you might say, yeah, but what about farming and that agricultural revolution? Well, okay. Think about it. We have free will. We have free will. And if you had the choice between figuring out what plants to grow that we could then turn into something we could later eat versus going away for weeks at a time to hunt for one animal that might last a week or so for the family, which option are you likely to choose? I know me. I'm lazy by nature. I'm like, forget that, man. I'll wait a few weeks, grab something, some plant thing, and like pickle it and then eat it. Right? That's what I'll do, because that's a whole lot easier than trying to track down and hunt an animal that doesn't want to be caught and that could potentially kill me. What am I more likely to do? The less difficult one. And that's us as humans all over, right? And until we even learn how to domesticate certain animals, that was still a challenge. So that's it. I just wanted, I don't know, I had to share this. I had hoped that this would be done on the computer, but the microphone on the computer isn't working. And so you're getting me instead this way. But I hope this is really helpful. I truly do. I hope this is somehow encouraging. Look, it's never too late. Again, not the food police. If you choose to eat cereals and grains, although I really recommend that you don't, because the bodies are not designed to process or absorb any of it. These are things that were only ever designed for the animals to eat, okay? Whether you're talking oats or wheat or grass or corn or soy or any of the other grains that we think are superfoods, we may have managed to find ways to eat them. That doesn't mean we should, okay? It doesn't mean we should. And it certainly isn't like we're absorbing any of it. Because if you eat things like chia seeds, any seed, where does it always end up? In the toilet. One way or another, it ends up in the toilet. We don't absorb that stuff. We can't process it or digest it. We just don't. We're not meant to. But meat, on the other hand, wow. If I was to step away from eating egg yolks and meat, my IBS symptoms would be back like a rash, okay? But as long as I stay on this way of eating, I have remission from the majority of my symptoms, or at least like an 80% reduction, which is incredible. I'll take it, right? I hope this might help you guys as well. Thank you so much for stopping in and checking out the channel. And I really, really hope that this is helpful. Again, please seriously go check out Joey Schwartz, known as Carnivore Conversations on YouTube. He has this amazing video where he's talking with, like I said, Dr. Alan Davies, who was a vegan for 25 years. I don't know too many people who went vegan who lasted more than like 5 months. This guy did it for 25 years. He's now carnivore, and he says he would never go back. So check out that video. It is absolutely worth watching. And share this with anybody you know. I really, truly hope that we can get the word out, that as Christians, it's okay. In fact, God wants us to eat the meat. And really, as much as possible, stay away from plants. Maybe fruits, maybe a little bit of fruit here and there, but otherwise, vegetables, no, just please don't. Please don't. That stuff is meant for the animals, especially the ruminants, because they can eat it, put it through their 4-stomach or 3-stomach system, and actually turn it into delicious skeletal meat and fat that we can then enjoy. It's not meant for us to eat. No matter what people say, no. Just because you can't eat it doesn't mean you should, right? Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. I really, really hope this is helpful, and share it with whoever you want on social media. If you know somebody this might help, I hope it does. Share it along. If you've not yet subscribed, please do, because that would mean a lot. It'd be great. Let's build community. Let's encourage each other. Let's help each other, and eat the way God intended. Okay? Thanks, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.